This is Senate Appropriations. We're continuing our work on the 25 budget. And we're taking testimony now from the Vermont State College system, and we welcome the Chancellor. This is your first, obviously, Sharon's a familiar face. And we welcome you to the committee and to Vermont and to your new position, and hope it's all going well. And you want to introduce yourself just for the record as being here?
Sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Drake Turner, and I'm the Director of External and Governmental Affairs for the Vermont State College.
So she took Captain Lavaster's place, in case you're wondering.
Where should she go?
She's probably just some consulting, I think.
And she has its own contract with them.
So I'll turn it over to you. You probably have not been through this before, but the Senate probably does not go through the same budget process as the House. We're on two committees, and so we really just want to get to the highlights of the budget. We're really concerned about the transformation plan, the level of funding, and if you could refresh us where we are in that 5-year period. What is not included in the budget, because I believe the governor did not include the bridge funding. Those are the kinds of things that are really important to us. So this is your opportunity to tell us what you think is most important and also the highlights of the budget.
Well, thank you. And I will start with a more general.
You need to put yourself on the record, though.
Oh, my own record.
Yes, you are on record, and you're on YouTube.
Wonderful. So yeah, and I will let Sharon do some of the more the details of the plan.
Just.
I have to use my, yeah, there we are.
I will put yourself on the record, please.
I'm Elizabeth Mauk. I'm the Chancellor of the Vermont State College System. And thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it. And I do want to start just by thanking this committee for its great support of the Vermont State Colleges system. Thank you, Senator, for certainly your service on the select committee, but just your great support through the years. To Senators Kitchell and Westman and the rest of this committee for your support and leadership. The Vermont State Colleges system really does appreciate that. The mission of the Vermont State Colleges system, and I always want to bring us back to that, is that it starts that we are to be for the benefit of Vermont. And I think that that is very important because something that I have come to as I have started my tenure as the Chancellor. I think that we always have to come back to that. The 4 key tenets of that will be ensuring access, affordability, quality, and relevance. And in doing that, I believe that we will be able to meet the needs of Vermont and all Vermonters in a way that will continue to ensure the continuation of the system. We do have a great workforce role. We're vital to Vermont's workforce. We train nurses, educate teachers, plumbers and electricians, engineers, provide research opportunities for our students. So there is a great variety of opportunities for our students within workforce roles. Just some recent news, so you can hear some of the things we've been doing. We did receive congressionally designated funding for our nursing program. Right now, we are in the process of adding about 100 new nurses every year to Vermont, which is a great need. We've obviously done a lot with education through the years. Most recently, we received a rural post-secondary education grant for $1.9 million. Just yesterday, I heard in the EPSL committee that we have that many of those dollars are going to opportunities for our students to participate in internships and other high impact practices for them, which is very important in a rural setting. Ross Liebleven, a professor at Vermont State University, also has received around $3.3 million, most notably from the Army Corps of Engineers for funds in the Arctic, to fund some programs in the Arctic looking at some microbes. And that I want to bring your attention to because it's so important, because that does provide opportunities for our students to conduct faculty-led research, which is something that's also very necessary in the state. So sort of the why of this, in 1961, the Vermont General Assembly created the Vermont State Colleges system, but really in the last 4 years, our bond has just become so much stronger as you all have helped us to really start the transformation. And we are really, as I said, grateful for your foresight and for the bridge and baseline funds that you provided to us. You asked about the transformation progress, so just to give you some highlights. By the end of FY 25, so this is the budget that we are requesting, we will have reduced our budget by $15 million. The overall goal is 25 million, so we are right where we were expecting to be.
And I just interject.
Sure.
The 25 was the structural deficit, and it can be met not only with reductions, but also how to increase enrollment and the revenue side. So I think, and the only reason I'm saying it is for anybody who's listening, is that focus has always been on the reduction side, but it really can be both working together to get to that 25 million target.
It's closing the gap.
And I know that certainly we hear from the unions, the 25 million is unrealistic, we ought to lower it, et cetera. But it does seem as though it was really designed to look at both sides in terms of how do we generate more revenue and how do we operate our campuses most efficiently and look at this system as a whole. So I just wanted to state that for the record. So,
I appreciate that.
and Senator Ruth was very much involved in that, so I hope I stated it correctly.
In addition, this year we did launch the new Vermont State University. I'm proud to report that they did meet their enrollment targets. And about 70% of those students are Vermonters. 50% of those students approximately are Pell eligible, and 50% are approximately the first in their family to go to college. I think that really helps to explain many of the populations that we are serving. In addition, 19% of our students are, they identify as being BIPOC. Some of the employers and workforce development that we've done, we've worked with Beta Tech, Global Foundries. We have some really exciting partnerships with them, and the Central Vermont Medical Center. So we do have these business and medical partnerships that I think are so important to our students. To your point about what is the future of transformation. So one of the things I have been looking at is how can we leverage the strengths of the system to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students. We're looking to be a real model for a hybrid model for students, which means that we will try to meet students' needs and meet students where they are. We are looking at a couple of other savings opportunities and a compensation model that we're going to be looking at. We're looking still for efficiencies. We will be looking at master planning to see if there aren't some more efficiencies in all of those.
Can I ask, you called it efficiencies through the compensation model, is that a early buyout?
Two different things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the compensation.
Probably healthcare.
Right, it's we're gonna look and see if we find some savings with healthcare and that, and we're just starting those negotiations. The efficiencies would be in some of the systems that we have, so right now we're looking for a new ERP. Are there ways that we can leverage the system's buying power to create some of those efficiencies, and we're seeing where that certainly could happen. But in addition, looking at enrollments and how we can grow those enrollments, a couple of the ways we can do that, certainly 50% of the students in Vermont, many students graduate, 50% of high school students don't go on to post-secondary education.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's.
I think it's like down to 42%. Oh, it's not going in the right direction.
No, and I think that this notion of meeting students where they are and looking for a variety of ways that we can meet their needs.
That wasn't a negative reflection on the state college system. It's just how we.
It's just what it is.
It's what it is and how we get students much earlier on. People talking about even though. And it's yes, it's still boys, and I'll say that our male youth are not doing well. And there was a great, actually, it was sent to me by Dan Smith, an article that was published recently about the plight of our male youth. And it's a real concern in terms of,
Dual enrollment as well.
yeah, dual enrollment and, you know, the gender balance now is, well, we've talked about it, the men is mine is 70%, 30%. And it's not in any way to minimize the progress that women have made. You know, back in my day, we used to say you can go to women's college to get a degree and then you could go to Katie Gibbs and get a job. And Katie Gibbs was a clerical secretarial school in Boston. So the world's changed a lot since then, but it's really not the balance that we seek. And dual enrollment was really one of those strategies. The other thing that I was surprised about, and that is dual enrollment. And my local high school goes to Southern, has with SNF. And it raised questions. They have CCD, and then they have Southern New Hampshire. And which has been, excuse me, aggressive about their presence and even going to other states like Pennsylvania. So I don't know if part of your strategy, to the extent to which we can somehow make stronger connections with our local high schools relative to dual enrollment. I probably got you off your script.
No, I agree. Certainly, we are looking for a variety of ways that we can meet needs of students where they are. And so certainly these are some of our competitors that we realize are out there, but we are looking for certainly Vermont students Vermont students coming straight into college. We are looking to see how we can meet the needs of adult learners who either potentially are already in the job market or are looking to get a position that would require the secondary education. So we are looking at a variety of elements in order to, again, to me, this for the benefit of Vermont is where we all really need to come back to. I would like to acknowledge that not everything has gone the way we expected it to go. And we certainly have faced criticism sometimes for some of our decisions. One of the things, I think as all of you know, I am an academic. And so fundamentally, I do believe that we've got to meet with our critics, to learn from them, to talk to them. And that has been something that I've already started to do to try to hear what their point of view is. And so we're working on that. Just in closing, I do want to thank you for everything that you have done. It is my belief now, about 10 weeks into this job, that we are on the right path, that the transformation path that we chose broadly overall has been successful, and that we will continue down this path. One of the things I will be looking at are not only the necessary steps that we must continue to make, but starting to look at some strategic planning to see how we can ensure that we will be meeting the needs of students into the future. So thank you. And I'll pass it over to you.
So you actually get to do the money, is that it?
I do.
Yeah, she gets to do the money.
I'm already flipping.
I know. So for the record, my name is Sharon Scott. I'm the Chief Financial and Operating Officer for the Vermont State Colleges. And it really is my pleasure to be able to be back with you again to talk with you about the Vermont State Colleges budget request. So our request is in 3 parts. We're requesting an increase to the general fund appropriation, an adjustment to global commitment funding for our nursing and allied health programs, and then funding for our bridge, as well as for the CCD tuition advantage program. So moving to the slide, I believe it's slide number 3. Our request for ongoing funding is in 3 primary parts. The first is that we're requesting a 10% increase to the $48 million appropriation that we have today to $52.8 million. The governor's recommendation is a 3% increase on our current base appropriation. And that is very consistent with his recommendations for many other areas of the budget. And we are very grateful for that. And we know that even that is a stretch. However, when we look at the appropriation that we have today, and we compare that to the recommendation that the select committee put forward starting in the fall of 2020, that select committee recommendation was really predicated on the conditions that were in place at that time. at that time, the CPI annually for the 3 years leading up to it was running about 1.7%. So the $48 million at the end of this 4-year period would accommodate what that looks like under a 1.7% increase. Yet the conditions since 2020 have really accelerated, and none of us expected the overheating of the economy that we actually saw with all of the investment that the federal government made. And so the consumer price index was actually averaging about a 4.7% increase since then. And that leaves us about a 9.6% gap in the purchasing power of that $48 million. So what we're requesting is a one-time adjustment to that base appropriation that would place us in the same position that the select committee really anticipated when doing those calculations. That's
I'm just wondering, you said a one-time adjustment to the base?
it's an adjustment to the base, so that would be ongoing.
I
So that instead
Yeah,
of 48
that's an
million,
oxymoron.
sorry,
Yeah.
my apologies. I tried to frame it as well as I could, but instead of 48 plus the 3%
Got it.
for ongoing, it would be 48 plus 10%. And then from that point forward, we would anticipate making requests that would be relatively consistent with what the governor's recommendations are on an annual basis. The additional boost really would allow us to be able to continue to safely and strategically continue the work. And as you know, Senator Kitchell, the real challenge for us is both the reductions in expenditures as well as increases in ongoing revenues. Now, we've been really clear with our communities that those increases in ongoing revenues need to be real, and they really do need to be ongoing. So as Chancellor Mount noted, one of the things that we're looking at in terms of expanding revenue is Vermont State University's expansion in its nursing programs. So we are anticipating adding about 100 additional nursing students into that pipeline over each of the next 3 years, so 100 each year, allowing us to be able to increase by 300 students at the end of those 3 years. Those are things that we're looking at as some of the permanent increases, as well as really looking towards some of the workforce. One of the things that we really know about the way that our students are today is that they are both older and they're taking fewer credits. And as you so clearly note, we are lacking in men. And so we really need to be diversifying and looking at what those look like. So both Vermont State University and Community College of Vermont are really focusing a lot of attention on not just our traditional 18 to 24-year-old students, but looking at how students may come in and take a few credits here and there. How do they build those in a laddered credential way to be able to move forward? So the second thing that we're making a request for, and that the governor did put in his recommendation, was to combine B.602 and B.602.2. So for the last several years, you have noted in B.602.2 a separate line for transformation. We are recommending, and the governor has also recommended, collapsing those two into a single line for the ongoing base appropriation. And it's just for ease of tracking for us to be able to move forward. We certainly understand why it was separated, because you were seeking to hit that 17.5 million. But now that we're there, being able to collapse those would be helpful. And then the last ongoing activity is making an adjustment to the allied health nursing and nursing programs and their global commitment funds. The governor has recommended, and we agree with increasing that global commitment funding to 1.5 million, and simultaneously making an adjustment to the general fund for that. And what that would do is actually decrease the general fund to $280,000. Absolutely, and it wasn't what we put forward, but it makes so much sense. It just takes care of it on the back end, and there is no writing back and forth to each other, which is helpful. So those are the 3 requests that we would make to this committee in terms of general fund. The next is related to one-time requests. So for the past several years, we've shared with this committee our transformation plan. And those plans have included a step down over 5 years as we
What is the
adjust.
5 years up?
So with the FY27 budget, we will have a balanced budget. So we are expecting that we will have 2 additional years.
So through
FY
26 and
FY 25 and
25.
FY 26. So it's a $10 million gap in FY 25 and a $5 million gap in FY 26.
And this is the reduction of the
This
structural
is the
deficit.
reduction of the structural deficit. So we are simultaneously bringing down the structural deficit and the bridge at the same time. So
Yeah,
Madam Chair, if I might, I'm glad you went there because that's my basic question today is, that 25 million in structural deficit was supposed to, be working in concert with ramping up the base and the transitional funding, the bridge funding. I'm wondering, because I think all of us have heard at some point from the unions involved, state employees, that they are concerned that we've essentially, in the first 3 years of the structural deficit reduction, we've gotten the low hanging fruit and the medium hanging fruit, and that now we would be digging into faculty positions that can't be surrendered, but would need to be administrative positions that can't afford to be surrendered, but would need to be. So thoughts on whether or not we should be discussing reducing. So we're talking about raising the base, but another thing we could do would be to reduce that necessity for structural reduction, understanding that it's meant to make you more solvent down the line. But if it hurts performance or the student experience, then obviously it's counterproductive.
Well, maybe
So-
that's why they're asking for 3.4 million.
Well, so my question first is the structural deficit and the next, not this year so much, but the next 2 $5 million installments. Thoughts on whether we should hold firm to that or whether we should rethink that as something else that a number of years ago seemed like the target, but might be something different.
So I think we have a couple of things to answer there. First, I will respond to FY 25. So for FY 25, our colleges will be putting forward their second pass budget on April 1st. They are well on their way to hitting that target for FY 25. So it's really the FY 26 and FY 27 years that we are concerned about. Much of the work that occurred this fall at Vermont State University with administrative and academic optimization is really being realized in FY 25. But you are asking a really important question. The challenge that we have is that it is not just the imposition of a $25 million target by the legislature that tells us that we have to do this. We have a real structural issue within the Vermont State colleges. And if we do not see a way to make budget reductions or increase our revenue, that hole will still be there. And we can't expect that you as a legislative body will necessarily be able to fill that gap. And that's what worries us. So if we have the ability to be able to talk about making, not only we remove some of that burden on the Vermont State colleges, but that there is a way to be able to fill that gap. But the problem is that we, for so many years, did not think about that gap. We just chose not to invest in ourselves. I've been with the Vermont State colleges since 2003. There were many, many, many years where we did not invest. And so we are behind the 8 ball. With all of that said, you're also right that the hard work, some of the easy work, and I know merging institutions was not easy. It was not easy by any stretch of the imagination, and many people worked tirelessly for 3 years to make that happen. But what we have before us is even harder. Chancellor Mount noted that we really do need to look at compensation, and we are launching into working with our collective bargaining units over these next few weeks to really look at what does that structure look like. We know that our compensation structure is cash poor, but benefits rich. So what can we do there in order to be able to make those changes? We know that our physical footprint, frankly, is too large as we've seen a reduction in enrollment. But we have to look at those things. And as we all know, real estate in the state of Vermont takes a very long time to look at any changes, whether you're bringing partners onto your campuses or businesses to work with you, or you're looking at other activities. So are we ready to say that it can't be hit? I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's something that we need to be really cognizant of, and we really need to be talking about as we move forward. But I think our partnership with our collective bargaining units and our colleagues, faculty and staff is so vital that we have to begin those conversations, because those reductions don't have to be by cutting essential people.
Yeah.
It can be through looking at our compensation structure and rebalancing it towards what actually might make us attractive. When you look at some employers and we look at jobs like custodians and they're paying $20 or $25 an hour, and yet ours, because our benefits are so high, are running at less than $50 an hour. That's rough. And we don't want to be in that position, but that's something that we have to partner with and cannot make a unilateral change and would not consider anyway.
If I can just follow up, so I hear you saying that you think through this year, it doesn't make sense to be worried
Would be
about that
premature, I guess.
Just-
is what you're-
just yet. I am worried about it for a couple of reasons. One, I don't have to tell either of you that there have been spikes of negative publicity that have impacted enrollment, and it's been, a self-consuming circle. And it's really inhibited a lot of the work that we're trying to do. So what I worry about is that in pursuit of, so let's say it is in contract negotiations, we're trying to make up this $5 million next year or the year after. I worry that there will be a strike, there will be, discord within the community. And I know that the target of 25 million has provided you all, the administration, with more authority to go in and find these cuts and make them stick. But I'm wondering if instead of 10 million, over the next 2 years, it became half that, so that it was 2.5 million a year you were looking for. I guess what I'm trying to get to is a place where we're no longer providing pain to the university community, where everybody is moving forward and transformation accomplished. So just a way of saying that I'm consider me a skeptic going forward of the remaining $10 million structural deficit. I think it could wind up being cost prohibitive in terms of what it will mean in terms of campus upset. Just the library piece, which wasn't going to save a lot of money, the amount of negative feedback and the number of people that we lost in the enrollment process, I think is incalculable from that one decision. Seems to me that 5 million next year and 5 million the year after that, we're going to get into that territory yet again. So I would be myself for considering a more relaxed view toward that 10 million, so that it becomes something like 5, 2.5, 2.5. I'm
But I'm
not
talking
speaking.
about it then in addition to the 3.4 request.
Yes. So I'm not speaking for anybody but
You're
myself.
giving me a rash.
I understand. But initially it was part of what we said to the general legislature was we are going to hold people's feet to the fire, which I think we have. We've gotten 15 million in structural reduction. If we get another 5, that would be 20. And I think that would be maybe all you can get without going into things that will induce a level of pain that will get us back to where we were at the beginning of the process, which was bad. So
Well,
that's my piece.
And I think, just to pick up on that concern, is that sometimes you might be making decisions because of that financial short-term expediency, that in your heart of hearts know that it actually has long-term negative impacts.
Yeah.
And we don't want to avoid that. On the other hand, absolutely, as we're expecting every other part of, state budgets, to really take a hard look. And it sounds like in some ways that's still more that needs to occur. In that multi-year period, even if we go with whatever we can do here, it doesn't mean that it can't be revisited or recalibrated, or, you know, in the budget adjustment, if something comes up that is totally, you know, derail sort of, things or create such a negative situation, that, that we want to be able to respond to it. So, what's the right balance here between doing that rigorous examination, looking at you, and you really are, it sounds like there's still more work to do. You're telling us, let us continue, and then, but we can always revisit. Did somebody just text,
Vince?
Yes?
So one
He just
mechanism,
senses that he doesn't need it.
one mechanism that you have used to fund our bridge has been ARPA dollars, which I do know you need to have fully committed by that.
Well, we've got them all appropriated.
They are all appropriated, okay. If they were not, the process that you've used for the Vermont State Colleges has been economic support. And we have room both in the FY '24 capacity for economic support, as well as in what we're anticipating for FY '25. It's fully committed, I understand, but were it to, something to happen, we do have funds that we would be able to say could get applied to economic support, as an option available to you. At present, the governor's recommendation for bridge funding is $5 million. What we need in order to address the $10 million gap is the $2 million. So what we're respectfully requesting is fully funding the $2 million.
So,
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're pretty easy to get money. And,
you are,
well,
I feel like the Pharaoh's heart was hard.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but you have a way of earning money, right?
Through the tuition
Enrollment.
and fees and
So
enrollment.
my question is, how many new people do you have out there recruiting students, and how much has your student enrollment grown? Because being chair of ag, and you know, we don't have any ag students down there to speak of, because they closed the program right down at the old VTC. So how's your enrollment doing like this year compared to last year? And the other issue, you talked about doubling the nursing output, I believe.
300 student increase.
Yeah. So if you're gonna double that, must be, you're gonna have to hire more people to be able to achieve that. And we haven't heard anything in regards to, well, we gotta have X dollars to recruit instructors. And we've heard that the biggest issue is you can't find instructors in the colleges to instruct young people to become nurses. So how are we gonna overcome enrollment and then staff?
So in terms of enrollment, for fall of '24, so this upcoming fall, we are actually anticipating that for Vermont State University specifically, that enrollment will be about 3.5% higher than it is this current year. They saw a decline this past fall, in large part related to the merger of the institutions. And with any merger, we experienced the same thing when we created Northern Vermont University back in 2018. Some understanding in the marketplace is lost. It's hard to find you, understand your name, et cetera. But what we're seeing is a pretty significant rebound in terms of the admissions process. And our admissions and enrollment folks at Vermont State University are seeing some really positive numbers in terms of that rebounding. Now, that might be tempered a little bit by the federal government's change to the FAFSA, that none of us are aware of how that's going to work, but that's universal across all institutions of higher education, not just the Vermont State Colleges. Every institution that issues federal financial aid is experiencing the exact same problem with the US Department of Education, which is a challenge, but we'll get past it. In terms of overall enrollment, the process that the Vermont State Colleges employs is to look at the overall enrollment and look at the level of expenditure that's necessary in order to be able to meet that. So the budgets that are put forth by both Vermont State University and Community College of Vermont take into consideration overall enrollment and the actual education that's needed. Now, you have pointed out a really important point, Senator Starr, and that is that specifically for nursing, but also for engineering and computer science, it is challenging to find faculty in those disciplines. Nursing, especially when you can become a traveler and a traveling nurse, we know how expensive that is here in the state of Vermont. And we are somewhat limited in terms of our collective bargaining agreements. As Chancellor Mack noted, we are entering into negotiations and that will likely be a factor in our negotiations as we talk with our full-time faculty about what that compensation structure can and should look like relative to that. But we don't anticipate anything out of the ordinary related to that. Now, we did make a request in the first ongoing part for an increase in the global commitment match, the global commitment for allied health. And that will go towards our nursing and allied health programs, which will help us offset some of that educational cost associated with running those programs. They are critical and vital to the state of Vermont, and that is something that would be very beneficial to us.
Yes, Senator.
So the match for the global community and speak about, we got the grant, basically the Leahy grant that was $6 million to go into that. And because I don't know the details, because we're using are we using that for salary in this initial build-up spot? And and the benchmarks for it would translate into more tuition, and I don't understand the structure quite of that, where it is and the piece around that.
Sure. So the earmark that came by way of Senator Leahy is going towards largely the construction and fit up of new nursing sites, specifically at the Johnson location, which will allow us to be able to tap into a market that we are not really currently able to do for nursing with Vermont State Colleges. We can tap into the Franklin County and Chittenden County market as well as the Weld County. So that will be very beneficial to us, and we believe can not only help in terms of the traditional age student that we might be interested in attracting to be residential on that campus, but also really focusing a lot of attention on some workforce education related activities, because that is a critical need in both Franklin County and in Chittenden County, and is something that we've been in talks with medical providers for. So that's the majority of what that funding is for, not to go towards salaries. We would anticipate.
Is any of it going towards ongoing salary and base of the $6 million?
Basically, are you asking, are you using one-time money for ongoing?
Absolutely not.
I'm just checking,
Programming
because
operation?
we run into people all over the place that are doing that, and we end up catching.
Not on my watch.
Well,
I'm glad to hear that. We've known each other.
We've known each other for a long time. No, we will not use one-time funds for that.
and then we did in the budget adjustment, obviously allow the conversion of them to the simulators,
Correct.
which is another strategy to deal with some of the limitations here in clinical setting. One
I
more
have one more question. You talked about renegotiation of contracts in benefit rich, and there are a lot less. When those contracts were negotiated in the past, you had a lot of tenure in faculty across the system. There's a lot less of that all the way across higher education today. How long do you see the process taking to see results of whether or not any of that might work with as you negotiate with the university and your partners?
Well, our contracts expire this summer, and we are kicking off negotiations with each of our partners over the next several weeks. It's difficult to know how long that will take. It could be a very quick process. It could be an extraordinarily long process. As with all negotiations, no side anticipates getting everything they want, and certainly not everything they want in the first round. So it is very likely that we would work together as partners over successive negotiations, and successful contracts to achieve where we all want to be in the end.
I think what we're really looking for are wages that are competitive and benefits that are sustainable, and that is very important to us that we do.
Well, it's a very different place. You have a lot of more part-time people than you used to also. So, if I'm not speaking as an old person, when I went.
You're talking about adjunct faculty?
When I was went to school, it was a
That
lot
was
of.
when you were using the
Yeah,
fly rule.
That was
probably.
slide rule, but there was a lot of tenured faculty. And there's a lot more, part-time, and there's less tenure.
Even in the last 20 years, since I've been with the Vermont State Colleges, there has been a shift. And largely there have been shifts because the costs are so prohibitive that it is difficult for us to compensate fairly and have enough. But simultaneously, we've also seen some pretty significant reductions in enrollment, particularly in the last 10 or 12 years. And that has really shifted the volume of full-time faculty and staff that have been necessary in all areas. So a lot of the work that we have been doing and a lot of the work that was identified over the last 10 or so months has really been to try and make sure that we are as efficient as possible. One of the things that we were doing and came from the select committee is this merger of the 3 institutions into a single institution, which has allowed us to be able to share resources across the Vermont State Colleges in a way that we weren't able to do before. But we're also looking really clearly at very aggressive administrative consolidation, so back-end processing, things that don't necessarily touch the student, that are so important to being able to get our work done, but don't have to be unique, like payroll and accounts payable and those kinds of things. There are things that if they don't touch the student per se, they have to be done, they're essential, they undergird the whole process, but they don't need to be unique at an institutional level. And so those are things that we are all really trying to focus on.
I'm going to take one more question and then.
Just a quick question about the, get the name for the optimization, the administration, shrinkage. I saw it on the slide here, I think 33 was the number. Is that 33 positions that have been eliminated or were a chunk of them reclassified? So,
So those are positions that are eliminated or we have chosen not to refill them.
okay,
So some were eliminated, some are we chose not to refill. And there were new positions that were created.
not to refill meaning that they're empty.
That they were vacant at the time of the change.
Because we do get, we get other reports about what's going on. And one of those was that these were illusory savings because people had essentially been renamed, reclassified and moved. And that didn't seem likely to me, but.
No, they're permanent, so they're adjustments. And so there were reductions in both full-time faculty and in administrator or staff positions. And they were either positions that were.
So they are phantom positions.
Yes.
apparently. Although, as you well know, and we've had some discussion, the magical answer is we eliminate the chancellor's office. And that would take care of everything. However, we know a lot of functions did get consolidated and they would have to continue, so. I know that there's been discussion around that at this pivotal time. It seems as though having the leadership in that way is an essential element, but the question is, do you need a president and do you need a chancellor? And we're hearing that and we understand that the board has considered that and feels very strongly that in fact that's the case. I also know that a new board member, Representative Mahali, is joining the board, and he came from Vermont law. And so I really hope that having someone who have administrative experience in higher education, will be a valuable voice and bring some experience. Appreciate that. And you don't need to respond in terms of, what we hear. That there's oftentimes magical answers to so many things. So, with that, I'm going to suggest we move on to military, which I assume is awaiting in the hall. And then we have further questions. We'll be in touch. Thank you all.
The military to talk amongst themselves.
No.
Oh, military zooming in, appropriate, and then, HR.
Chancellor, thank you.
So, thanks to all of you, we appreciate it.
Thank goodness the room is emptying. Okay. So we have. We have General Knight, I see. Oh, you want that take on me?
You want?
Thank you.
Go for it.
We're all set. We have two screens with General Knight. Hmm.
It's paid double up.
No. We're ready, anytime with, your testimony. Kim, you're on as well. Can you hear me?
But the general is still connecting.
Really? I can't see.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, yeah.
there it is.
Okay. Now we've got Kim.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can't see you, but we can certainly hear you and we can hear and see Kim as well. So we're obviously taking up your 25 budget request. You are not a big general fund part of the budget simply because of all the federal funds that are in your budget, but we'd like to have you kind of run through the high points. Don't need to go through line by line, but just a sort of a summary of your budget and any other highlights or accomplishments that you would like to use this opportunity to tell us about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to take perhaps 10 minutes, and I'll turn the rest of the time over to Ms. Fideli, just to give you the past year a quick summary and some of the work that our Air and Army National Guard's been doing, if that's okay with you and the committee.
Sure. We have until about 2:15. We started a little late, so we can go a little past that. So use the time however you want to divide it up. So why don't you start with your introductory remarks and then we can turn it over to the actual budget.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'd just like to give you some quick highlights, not simply about what the organization's been doing, but some of the remarkable individuals we have in the Vermont National Guard. And I'll point out that some of the work they do goes beyond a traditional military to military type activity. For instance, we had two of our airmen volunteer with the Air National Guard Innovation Readiness Training Program. One went to the Blackfeet National Reservation in Montana, and it was one of our airmen that provided oversight and coordinated 30 engineers that rotated in for 2-week increments to accomplish projects that included building 6 homes and more than $100,000 in community projects. One of our other airmen worked at the Cherokee Nation Reservation in Oklahoma, and he was in the lead in coordinating with 313 airmen during the construction of houses for homeless veterans, and that ultimately saved the community $1.2 million.
I think we need your experience there right here in Vermont as it relates to housing for veterans, to be honest. I don't know what there's been discussion, but that certainly is an effort that that was undertaken by the guard and gee, 100,000. Wow, this is 6 homes. Well, that's great. I think
Well, we're here to help, man.
away.
And And we can certainly pursue, I'm sure that there's an application process for that. We can do a little research and find out what that is.
Great, thank you.
So the other thing that's operationally, in my view, and I know I have a bias, we have perhaps the best F-35 fighter wing in the Air Force. As an example of that, we traveled in 2023, this past spring, and participated in what we call Air Defender 2023. And this is a German-led multinational exercise, and it integrates focusing on interoperability. And it's operational and tactical level field training. And we did that in Czech Republic, Estonia, Germany, and Latvia. I think what's important here is our ability to integrate with 25 countries, approximately 220 aircraft and about 10,000 personnel. And that's inclusive of 100 aircraft from our Air National Guard across the nation participating in this event. And we don't take that lightly. We were asked to do that. And as with all things that this Guard does, they exemplified professionalism and expertise when they went over to do that. As another example of that, we went to, our fighter wing went down, and they hadn't done this in a very long time, a number of years, the William Tell Air-to-Air Weapons Meet. And this was at the Air Dominance Center in Savannah, Georgia. And that evaluates F-35s, F-22s, and F-15 fighter integration teams from across the Air Force in what we simulate to be a near peer-like competition. And as noted in my notes, the wing received the top F-35 award during that event. The other thing I would point out is that the explosive ordnance disposal flight from our fighter wing, working with the State Department, the Humanitarian Mine Action Program, and this was a first, planned and taught the first explosive ordnance disposal level 2 phase 1 course in North Macedonia in March. And of course, we've been partnered with North Macedonia now for over 30 years. It'll be our 31st year. If I go down to what we're doing with our commitment to the environment, it's evident in what we're building and how we're building it. We've got some existing resiliency projects, but we're adding 474 kilowatt solar array with a 500 kilowatt battery backup to the fire station, with excess power feeding into the base grid. What that should do for us is bring the renewable energy costs close to covering 45% of all base electrical needs and the beginning of a base-wide resilient smart grid. And that goes into the future green initiatives. We're adding a photovoltaic resiliency for $10 million, photovoltaic panels and battery storage to generate power in combination with generators to power critical missions if we lose commercial utilities, adding geothermal solar heating, that's $2 million, and adding base solar heating to augment and boost winter geothermal water temperatures, increasing efficiency and reliability for geothermal technology. Probably one of the most significant things is the pending move of our 229th Cyber Operations Squadron, which last year received what we call an operational mission. They were an instructor unit teaching cyber, and now we're making them operational. With that comes a move to South Burlington, and we're in pursuit of funding. I think we're there to build a carbon-free cyber operations squadron building for $15 million. And all of that, of course, is the majority of its federal funding. And the Air Guard Fire Department continues to do amazing work. They save the local communities, Burlington in particular, more than $5 million in annual operating costs to run that fire department and respond in mutual aid to 10 surrounding communities. In fact, they did that 434 times last year with 34 airfield emergencies. So that means that 70% of our fire department responses were off base to support our local fire departments. Very quickly, I'll move to the Army National Guard, our brigade, our infantry brigade. This last year in June, they sent over 100 soldiers to the Joint Readiness Training Center at Fort Johnson, Louisiana, formerly Fort Polk, which is the Combat Readiness Training Center. It was a very significant exercise. The role for this one was different. Rather than being the training unit, they were used as the opposing force to give training value to the unit being evaluated. So that was a first for our soldiers, a great experience for them integrating with the soldiers that normally perform that role. So a different perspective for them. And they also have a global impact. We had about 50 soldiers trained in the mountains of Slovenia, a multinational exercise, multi-state, called Immediate Response. And that's part of a larger exercise called Defender Europe. Within the Garrison Support Command, and Madam Chair, for me, this is probably the most remarkable story in all I'm going to tell you today. We had in 2023, they just came home in January, we had our Medevac Blackhawk company deployed for a period of about 10 months. And they deployed to Central Command in support of ongoing combat operations. What's of note here is they're working out of 8 austere sites. Not ideal for maintenance, not ideal for operations. So it's very basic living conditions for them and maintenance. Despite that, they flew 369 medical evacuation missions, totaling 1,549 flight hours, and then transported 902 patients and medical personnel. So this is the second time they did that without dropping a single mission, not for maintenance, not for crew. Not dropping a single mission is remarkable given the conditions they were working in. 3 years ago, that same unit with a few different personnel flew over 250 medical evacuation missions, also did not drop a single mission. So to have over 600 missions flown and not missing a single one is remarkable, and certainly a testament to their expertise and professionalism and focus on the mission. I'll jump very quickly to recruiting. Not good, not where we need to be. I've got some things in the works here, and certainly some of that involves working with our legislators to increase messaging, improve our messaging to our centers of influence. We have trained 14 new recruiters, and that has resulted in small growth, an improvement of 34 enlistments over the previous fiscal year at this time. We have improved our focus on the New American community, reaching out to those underrepresented populations. We've been working with Burlington City Councilor Ali Jiang, who's on the New American Advisory Council, and he's a remarkable advocate for us and a personal friend of mine. And we've seen some positive trust building going on there. So we're going to continue that. It expedites the path to citizenship and gives those new Americans opportunities that they certainly didn't have in their home country. One thing we have seen.
General night, I was at an Upward Bound trio conference at Linden at Northern Vermont University. I guess it's now changed name, but NVU. And actually you had a presence there, really promoting your tuition benefit program and trying to get people who are involved with students pursuing education or training after high school to make them aware of the benefits of the tuition program and the skills development that are available through joining enlistment in the Guard. So I just thought I would tell you that I was at that meeting and you had a very strong positive presence there.
Outstanding. Thank you, Madam Chair. The two other things that we. Go ahead, ma'am.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one of the other things we're working on is we've implemented it, been in place for a little over 2 years now, is a Joint Enlistment Enhancement Program, which is providing incentives to members who actually have somebody enlist in the Guard as a referral. So that we're seeing growth with that program. We were a little flat in 2022 because we had some deployments ongoing. So that's we're going to continue that. That has gotten some traction with us. It seems to be working. So I'm going to reinforce success there. I would also note, and Kim will talk a little further about this, I believe, the Vermont Education Entitlement Program that we worked with the legislature to get in place. That's been really beneficial for us when used and combined with federal tuition assistance and GI Bill benefits. It's a remarkable incentive. From FY22 to FY23, we've actually grown the use of that program and getting our force more educated. We went from about $600,000 in 2022. Again, there was a large scale deployment ongoing to last year, about $1.1 million expended to get our folks educated. So that's a remarkable success, and we're certainly appreciative of the legislature in working with us to get that there.
So does the governor's budget include, you say you're seeking 1.3 million in 25 to fund this? Does the governor's budget include that funding?
I'll defer to Kim.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
And
Now down to federal, yeah.
I'll wrap up with this and then turn my time over to Kim. One thing we've done here in Vermont, and we've been very forward leaning in establishing the prevention program. This was a result of the DoD Interim Review Commission recommendations that came out. We're in the process of implementing many of those. Working at the national level on a General Officer Steering Committee on getting those lines of effort executed. And one of the biggest ones was the establishment of an integrated primary prevention team. They're now fully operational. We have a primary prevention plan. We're going to be briefing that tomorrow night to our command teams. And this team's charter is to assist our commands in implementing and evaluating suicide, domestic abuse, sexual and workplace violence prevention efforts. So this is tremendous for us, and to be one of the first states to receive the authorizations and then become probably within the first 3 of actually being operational is pretty remarkable. So they're very focused on it. I'm looking forward to the plan and what that can do to get us to the left of incidents and make us simply a better organization. And actually, I lied. The one thing I will close with is the state partnership program. You know, we keep up our engagements with Macedonia, Senegal, and Austria. And every year we will plan on doing a medical readiness exercise in Senegal. So last year in May, we sent 40 of our Army and Air providers over there. And this is doctors, nurses, physicians' assistants, combat medics, technicians to help repair equipment. And they worked in 3 local communities east of Dakar. And they're hand in glove with the civilian providers at these 3 clinics. And in about 2 weeks, they saw and treated 570 Senegalese citizens. For me, I can't market that any better, the strength of that partnership. In fact, one of our nurses, one of our Vermont National Guard nurses who was working in labor and delivery, revived a Senegalese infant at birth. And for me, that Senegalese mother and those providers and those families will always know that it was one of our National Guard providers that saved her child. I can't buy that kind of marketing. And the impact that it has on the international stage is pretty profound, at least in my perspective. But that's what I've got for right now, ma'am. I think you have the notes there. I will turn over my time to Ms. Fideli.
Thank you. We've got your ups and downs forms here. I'm just going through them. Obviously, general fund is relatively small. It seems like unless you can identify something that stands out, that in terms of the state funding, really it's driven by what we see all the time, and that's salaries, benefits, and then what you have allocated from, for example, ABS or, well, you don't, you did have something there for, a big one is increase for air guard operations, where the state share actually increased from 20 to 25%. That seems to be one of the things out of the few that really stand out as maybe a change where that federal match is adding 65,000 to the your request, general fund request. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, ma'am, you are. So I can certainly speak to that topic, and you are correct. Our general fund increase for FY25 is pretty small. It's $350,000 from this year, or the current year's budget, to our total request of 6.8 million in FY25. The increase that you had mentioned in our Air Guard budget is probably the most significant. So for the last 3 fiscal years, the Air Guard utilities, or sorry, I should say Air Guard operations and maintenance program has been under a temporary waiver. So historically, that program is funded 75% federal funds, 25% state funds. And in FYs 21, 22, and 23, the state received a temporary waiver of that allocation from 75-25 to an 80% federal, 20% state split. So that waiver has come to an end. So the increase that you're seeing is to return us back to our 25% share that we have historically provided. So that would include an increase to operating costs and an increase to the personnel costs that work under that program.
Okay, appropriation 3 is really no general fund there. That's our Army service contract.
Yes.
A lot of federal money though, certainly, what, 50.6 million?
It is. And that it is pretty elevated at this point in time and will be for the next several years. We actually have 10 ongoing major military construction projects that are all currently the ones that we have in process, in design or construction, are all 100% federally funded. So that number will remain relatively high for the next several fiscal years.
Moving on then to building maintenance. That's up just a little bit, 1.8, but total for 1.7. But that's mostly general fund, and that's of our armories, I'm sure.
It is. And so the building maintenance appropriation actually provides the state match for the Army appropriation that we just discussed. So within the Army appropriation, one of the only Army program that we have, which is operations and maintenance, does require a state match. That all of that state match lives within the building maintenance appropriation. So the majority of these $1.7 million that you see will be used towards state match for the Army federal funds.
And then the last page, still very modest, 3,800, I guess. Makes your budget a lot easier, Kim, than many of the others that we have.
Yes, it does.
I don't think there's anything, unless the committee's got any questions or clarification. It seems like that's pretty straightforward. I guess the 2 big things is the change in the match, and then of course the building activity that's currently underway. Other questions on the money side? The summary is very helpful. It certainly gives us a sense of the importance of the Guard and the work they do, not only here in Vermont, but around the world. So that's
I have non-money questions.
we have a non-money question. Okay. So Senator Perchley.
Yes, General, now you mentioned the recruitment challenges, and if you have the numbers here, I just wondered what your targets are, like how far off are you from where you want it to be?
Thank you, Senator. Currently in my Army National Guard, I have 710 vacancies. I have about 100 in the Air National Guard. And looking down the road, we need to turn that around pretty quickly. I've got a plan. One thing that we haven't done well, in my perspective, is put planning and structure behind recruiting. We've always treated as kind of a one-off, and we give people direction to go forth and recruit. We should be centralizing the planning and then decentralizing the execution. And of course, I've got a letter of instruction I'll be briefing to my force on April 2nd with about 8 lines of effort and consolidated follow-up every month following. And we'll see what comes of that. I know there's a couple of bills pending, one in House Education that would be beneficial to us. It's House Bill 739, pertains to personalized learning plans and having military options offered to students to include in those plans. And then the last paragraph of that particular bill is important to me. When we first received the entitlement for our education from the legislature, for the first year or two, we were able to go with VSAC to the how to pay for college events. And at some point, we were uninvited, not by VSAC. So I don't know where the objection was. So that the bill requires that VSAC provide the information on educational benefits that the military can offer, in particular the Guard. So, but I'm gonna continue to grow my outreach, start focusing a little more on VTC, for instance, and the tech centers. Reach out to those directors and bring those kids to see us. In many cases, if they join the Guard and they go to a trade school, for instance, what they learned in the Army, or the any of them, military, Air Guard, Army Guard, it crosswalks into a civilian job. A diesel mechanic could come back from training and crosswalk into an ASE certified diesel mechanic. I've got a job for him here. So we just need to get more information in front of people, Senator, and start educating what the Guard is and does.
Well, that sounds good. Also, personalized learning, and we were just having an earlier discussion about the plights of our male youth and the relevance and sort of the lack of response to traditional educational programs. So it sounds like maybe that's a lot more applied learning and a lot more relevant to that would be attractive. So that's good to hear. We'll watch for that bill. Other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Yes, Senator, and then I'm gonna.
just gonna ask, how is the Waterbury Armory sale coming? Between you folks and,
BGS.
yeah, BGS here in Vermont.
Should be
Senator,
fine.
I haven't had a recent update. Kim, do you have an update?
I don't have any further updates. We had after we had met with your committee about a month or so ago, we had some subsequent meetings with the House Appropriations and our House Senate institutions as well. As far as I know, everything is still on track. I haven't heard anything otherwise.
Its use is up and still yet to be determined. That's gonna be the question.
We're supposed to have that up and.
Well, I'm not sure. I think that might have been reconsidered, but the acquisition of the property was still gonna move forward, even if that didn't turn out to be a viable use. So thank you very much. Sorry we can't see you in person, General Knight. I'm gonna thank you, Kim, and then we'll move on and look for the bill that you referenced hopefully coming over from the House. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you
It's
for having
currently Education Committee. I haven't seen any movement on it. I know I've got my three
Oh.
caucus co-chairs are monitoring it, but no movement as of yet.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth, you see you shed your coat because I think probably not. The sun comes in this room. We don't ever want to complain about the sun. So I see you've got probably a lot more information here, and we'll go through the budget quickly and then and the summary document. My first question has to do with where we are relative to our classification system and the replacement of Willis.
Madam Chair, I'm surprised that you are asking me this question.
You are not at all.
So
I need to have you put yourself on record.
Oh.
First, Beth.
for the record, my name is Beth Fastici. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services. And with respect to our classification compensation system, we did a classification compensation study a few years back. We did send out a bid that we never acted on. We haven't received any funding yet for it, and we were not really
Are you telling me it's sort of in a roundabout way? It's
So we-
nowhere?
no, it's not. So one of the people in this committee diligently worked before she came to work for this committee and rewrote.
You mean I need to direct it to,
No, and she rewrote the bid documents, and since then we've we've had some further reviews on that. We put it out to bid, we just got responses. Last, about 2 weeks ago, we got, 7, I believe we got 7 responses, which we're really happy that we got a good number of responses this time. Last time we only had very few responses, so we got responses and we're in the process of, reviewing those.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
Yes,
Things are taking about as long as the common chart of accounts for
yes.
our public education system. All right, well, thank you for the update. You should have anticipated that, right?
I thought you might, I
Yeah,
thought you might ask. Yeah.
I'm sure you, sure you did. I'm glad I didn't disappoint you at all. So I guess we can let you go through,
Okay.
now that I've gotten my update, where you wanted to focus attention relative to your budget. You know that Senate and the House approach budgets kind of in a different way.
Yes.
So we really would like to have you go over the, the highlights,
Sure.
where things are from, your perspective. And see, you've got a lot of information here.
Yeah, I
I
think,
guess we would call these dashboards.
yes.
Uh-huh.
And I can, just as far as the kind of the summary of our budget and where we are, page 5, that's kind of the summary and budget highlight phase. It
Show
shows
your ups and downs. Oh,
ups and downs and down on page
I got
19
it.
to
Yeah,
20.
got it.
You wanna go through the ups and
No,
downs?
no, start with the highlights and we,
Okay.
if there's anything.
Yeah. You can see there's a 3.7% increase that we are requesting. And 60% of that total increase is due to increase in salary and benefits costs. And the remainder is due to increase of just a variety of operational expenses. We have 6 exempt staff and 103 classified positions. And nearly 80% of our budget is for the cost of personnel. Highlights for the year, for last year, we implemented and our paid family leave insurance program for state employees. So that went into effect July 1st, 2023. So we're about, we're over 6 months into that program. It's been very good so far. It provides a 60% salary replacement for up to 6 weeks for people who are on either designated family or medical leave. And that it's been really beneficial program, especially for newer employees or employees that are already out of their leave. So it's just kind of even though we have generous leave programs, sick leave.
I know, I left you with a lot.
I
I
I
bet, no,
have over 1,000 hours.
oh, I was in
But
weeks or months.
yes,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of employees that don't have that and don't have that available. So it really is this insurance. So for those people who don't have that kind of in their back pockets, this is a really good program for those employees. And we've had,
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, go ahead.
It talks about the extension to Vermont Business in FY 25.
Yes.
Does that affect you? Because you're still running the program when it goes out with this, so that will that.
so well, the way we did it was we used our state employees as a base.
Right.
To engage, we could bid it out competitively, the Hartford won that bid, so it's a 3-phase plan, the first year state employees. Year 2 is businesses, and then year 3 will be the rest of the population, so if their employer is not offering them the insurance, they'll be able to buy it, purchase it into the market. So we have the program for businesses begins July 1st, 2024, when they can actually start offering it to employees, but the quotes are available now, so businesses are talking to the Hartford or their brokers and getting quotes for that and kind of gearing up for launch of the program in July, and that is part of our contract. So all of part of the contract is in providing insurance to our employees, they were required to offer it to businesses in the state. And
There's a direct connection, like you won't have to, as it expands, it doesn't increase your workforce, like, because Hartford's just gonna do all that, like your work,
Right.
or you don't have to hire new staff if there's more people.
No, the biggest was getting our staff ready to run the program, getting it set up, and then it is, there's more administrative work on our behalf, just running another insurance program.
But the businesses would negotiate directly with the insurers. And,
Directly.
Yeah. And that plan for the businesses is meant to be very flexible, so while we at the state want to do 6 weeks as a base, another employer might want to do 12 weeks or 8 weeks, and we wanted to do 6% wage replacement, another employer might want to do 7%, they think that works best for their employees. So it's very flexible and totally geared for the employer and what works best for them, and I think that with this job market right now, anything that an employer can say that they have to attract employees to come work for them is really helpful. And especially what we're seeing is the paid family leave, but the employers are very interested in the family leave portion. You can buy just the family, or you can buy them combined, the family and medical. And most of them are mostly interested in the family component of that.
Other questions on this? I see, continue work on classification system.
Yes.
Oh, good. And innovate recruitment.
Yes.
I have to say, when we're sitting here, the negotiations that you undertake with state employees, and I'm bringing it up because we have a presence next. Obviously, I know that you're negotiating specifically with, the VSEA, but, we, know that we are competing with many other, employers, out there, particularly community-based, organizations. And, the salary differentials are, pretty hard, to justify when in fact those agencies are predominantly state-funded and were put in place to replace institutions. So every time there's, whatever that increase or benefit is, it has collateral impacts throughout, a variety of places, in the budget. And I notice in this, in state government, the additional cost of the payroll for the childcare on the employer side is being reflected in the budgets as well.
Yes.
So that's just something that is out there.
And we actually have settled with the VSEA, and they have ratified it with the executive branch, the ones that we negotiated. The VSEA has ratified all of those collective bargaining agreements.
So is this the year for pay act?
This will be the year for Pay Act, yes. And I think things are people are just starting to talk about drafting that up.
And what can you tell us what sort of what is the family cost of living and
So they're a little bit different this year. Corrections have a different corrections is actually getting a different pay structure. And so corrections is getting a little bit different pay structure than and then
you're talking about the correctional officers?
the correctional, we have 3 bargaining units. We have the supervisory bargaining unit, the non-management bargaining unit, and the corrections bargaining unit. So there's in the corrections bargaining unit is all of the non-management employees in the Department of Corrections, not just the people in the facilities. And then the supervisory bargaining unit has this also includes the supervisors in corrections.
So
And that's
supervisors actually have their own.
No, the supervisors across state
That's
have
why-
their own bargaining
Thank
unit.
you, I
But the lieutenants and the correction supervisors are kind of under that bargaining agreement. Under the supervisory one.
we'll see.
Yeah.
So, your budget is, well, of course, you have, you
Yeah, so,
cost allocated out.
yep, our total budget for fiscal year 25, this, you can see in the front
To
bar.
the,
Yeah,
to page 20, I think.
yeah, 19 and 20 is, those 2 pages of it. If you wanted to go there. Our total is, 17.48 million. 85% of that, or 14.9 million is internal service funded,
Which would simply be billed back to.
billed back to the various departments. With that, we have 2 major internal, with several internal service funds, and I actually included, a couple of pages of our, demystifying internal service funds document there. And there's a page on, the HR internal service fund, which funds most of the HR operations. And then there's also, what's called the vision fund. And that, funds our THR operations, which is, the system that we do, our payroll system as well as our, all of our employee, updates, all of our information on employees. So that's all that system. Those are two separate funds. So we're 11% general fund then, about 1.8 million. Well,
Yeah.
right, correct. The impact on the general fund is much higher than that. But
Right.
pure general fund.
Internal service,
Correct.
yes. Transfers are
Yes.
a big piece. Yes, just out of the same pocketbook.
You
Okay.
see, we have three separate budgets there. We have our human resources operations budget, and that one again is mostly our HR internal service fund with some general fund. Then our VTHR operations budget is pretty much 100% in the VTHR internal service fund, and then we have our benefits budget, which with that, most of that budget actually is funded through our most of it is our healthcare fund, which is the biggest internal service fund we have on benefits.
So on the internal service fund, those reductions and other changes, 800,000, that seems to be a interesting number. Even
Right,
21, what's?
so I don't know if you recall this, but last year we got new positions. And those are reflecting of the new positions. What happened last year was we funded those, they were all general funded, and then this year they're all going to our budget. So that $800,000, you're seeing that as the internal of the new positions for 2024. And Holly, I know I didn't introduce who was on the screen, but Holly is our chief financial officer and Harold is our Schwartz is our director of operations. And I want to make sure that I said that right, Holly.
Yep,
Right.
last year it was a one-time appropriation, where this year it's gonna be actually built. Those 6 positions are built into your budget. 6 of them are in the ops budget, and then 2 are in the VTHR budget.
Yeah.
I have a question that isn't related at all to your budget, but it's probably related to the state budget.
Okay.
But if people have any other questions, it's pretty straightforward. We have a bill that's been referred to us, and actually before it got referred, I said, I think we need to check this out. And it's a bill that would make Juneteenth a legal holiday.
Right.
And, my first concern is when we have legal holidays, are, what are the, obligations this would relate to, state employees or any other employees. We have institutions that have to be operated on 24/7, operated, not on, but operated 24/7. And, so if we, if this bill were to pass legalizing Juneteenth as a legal holiday, can you tell me, would this simply be up to bargaining as a potential cost? It would not automatically translate into anything more than, it would potentially be subject, and does it have any implications for any other entities like hospitals, et cetera, other employers? And not that you could probably answer that, but it raises that question. I don't know, Bennington Battle Day used to be, and Columbus Day, people are getting them with their floater, which means that that's time off. It therefore is a cost. It means, you know, that you've got to either have other people cover it and you might incur overtime, et cetera. So,
We get benefit.
what?
We still get benefit, but not,
No, Columbus Day, I
not
guess.
just
is-
People's Day.
No, it's all indigenous. No, what is the one? That's the
Yeah.
floater, yeah.
That's
So
not,
now,
Indigenous people.
so the holidays that we have now, we don't, state employees currently don't get Juneteenth off as a holiday and offices are opened. The same thing on Indigenous Peoples' Day. Employees don't get that day off and offices are
But I
open.
thought it was a floater.
It is no longer a floater.
Oh, okay.
And then Bennington Battle Day, employees do get the day off and our offices are closed. July 1st, the corrections bargaining unit bargaining some changes in the holidays, so they will be getting Juneteenth and Indigenous Peoples' Day off, but they will no longer have Bennington Battle Day as a holiday.
So
So they got 2 for 1.
Yes,
That's not a bad return.
it seems like good for the employees. I mean, make them happy because they get an extra holiday and the right thing to do as far as recognizing those days as particular significance.
Well, how many days do they get off besides their normal?
I would have to
Is it
go.
good?
I would have to add that up and I'll get that back, but it's.
Well, wait a minute, I'll tell you, I got it right here.
Close to 10.
12.
Well,
12, New Year's Day, Martin Luther King, President's Day, Town Meeting Day. That's a legal holiday.
well, it's a part of it.
Memorial Day, Independence Day, Bennington Battle Day, Labor Day, Indigenous People Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving and Christmas. 12, I have it right
We
here.
don't get Indigenous Peoples' Day though, so that's in the statute.
Those are the legal holidays.
Yes,
Yeah.
but also in the statute, it says that regardless of what are the legal holidays, the days that employees get off days for work is a matter of collective bargaining. So provided that that portion of the statute doesn't change, then what holidays employees get off will continue to be subject to collective bargaining.
Did you testify at all on this?
I have not.
So then you add the sick days
You know, well, sometimes people can be out for prolonged
and
periods.
the vacation days.
We have a very
You
generous
get a
leave
month
plan.
off or two. You
Well,
could take a month to.
I don't
you're
know.
not supposed to be using sick leave for other than
Yeah.
sick leave.
Right.
Right. And there's a requirement that you have to have doctor's certification if there's any question that it's not.
After so many days, so. Yeah,
So,
been there and done that with the.
All right, so-
employees.
I guess that bill then, does not at this point, require any more, funding as it would relate to state government.
Well,
Not automatic, but
No, not
not add to the bargaining
Well,
discussion.
it could, but it
Yeah.
seems like there's been some negotiation, particularly around, what Indigenous Peoples' Day, if that in fact.
that should be in the statute like the other ones that they. That if it's bargained from here.
Well, these are legal holidays, and so the question then is, how do those legal holidays connect to what has been bargained? Just because it's a legal holiday does not mean that automatically it extends as a day off for employees. That would have to be bargained with the union. And historically, Columbus Day, which is now Indigenous Peoples' Day, was a day off. Then it was a floater. People could take the day when they wanted, and now it seems like that's no longer, right,
But I thought you said it stated that in the statute.
Well, the statute, Columbus Day it's a state holiday.
It's a legal
It's a legal
holiday.
state holiday, but we as state government typically remain open on Indigenous Peoples' Day. The people can go and do their transactions at the Department of Motor Vehicles. We're open for business on Indigenous Peoples' Day. And we have been, in my tenure anyway. I don't know when it changed, but I don't know when that changed, but we have been. Whereas, Juneteenth was a day of a special day of recognition. It wasn't a holiday, but we did not have that off as a state holiday and the offices were closed, so they were not Yeah, there's examples of I guess there's examples either way on how it's treated.
So technically, you could collectively bargain whether employees get, Christmas Day off.
Yes,
Shall be proper matters for collective bargaining. So, just because they're a legal holiday does not translate into that it is a required, paid holiday for, state employees.
Is the day of Thanksgiving on it? Did they change that recently?
day after Thanksgiving is an interesting one. The non-management bargaining unit has that off as a holiday. I'm unsure of corrections. Supervisory bargaining unit does not. Typically, the governor grants that day off as a holiday for state employees, and we typically do full state government that day.
Thank you, I guess that. You answered my question. Just because we make it a legal holiday does not automatically, to a paid day off. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioner? Otherwise, we have 2 minutes before we're supposed to get to S 192.
I went way over.
No, you didn't. We were late starting. I said,
What's this one gonna be too?
right up on board, 245.
Well, what is the bill?
It is the forensic unit. Yes,
Have you picked them?
yes, we can, Katie can.
That's okay. I've been with Simon, how good.
All right, so I'm gonna suggest we take a 10-minute break and come back, and then, this shouldn't take too long, in terms of, and do you have copies of what the amendment?
I do, it hasn't been posted